Okay, instead of the normal introduction where I talk about who I am, because I know you don't care, I'm going to ask you a question instead. And the question is, what was the first food that you learned to cook by yourself? Peanut butter and jelly, ramen noodles, what else? What's that? Pancakes? Mac and cheese?
Butter beans.
What?
Butter beans.
What the heck is, what's a what? Plutter beans?
Butter.
Oh, butter beans. I see. Oh, lima beans. All right. Butter beans. That's good. What about grilled cheese? Anyone's first grilled cheese? No? Yeah? One in the back. I grew up a vegetarian. And anyone else here grew up vegetarian? I'm the only one? It's pretty common. Back in the 1980s, when I was growing up, vegetarian, you were pretty much the only one. And 90% of the time, if you went to a restaurant or you went to the school cafeteria, you ended up with one of these, the grilled cheese sandwich. And so I ate a lot of grilled cheese. And because you were all so kind to come to my session today, instead of all the other fantastic sessions you could have gone to, I'm going to share with you my mother's secret grilled cheese recipe. Okay? You ready? Okay. It starts with a seed. You take that seed, you dig a little hole in the ground, you put the seed in the hole, you cover the hole with dirt, you water it, you let the sun come down. Up comes a shoot of grass. You cut the grass, you take the bottom of the grass, you grind it into a fine powder. You mix that powder with water and some yeast, and there's different kinds of yeast. You could use like a sourdough starter, or maybe we'll come back to that. It's getting a little confusing, isn't it? Yeah? Okay. We'll go to the next thing. Okay. We'll come back to it, though. Okay. So for this part, when a mommy cow and a papa bull really love each other a lot, they go to the back of the pasture. How can I say this? This was a lot better when I rehearsed. Okay, well, we'll just skip that part too for now. But you take some bread, you take some cheese, you slather it in butter, which you get at the store. I don't know how to make butter. And you end up with one of these. The beautiful, glorious grilled cheese sandwich. So how many people learned to make grilled cheese the way I described it just now? Nobody, of course. You did? And with butter beans? But I think so often, this is how we think about training people. We say, okay, we're going to teach them HTML, then CSS, then theming, then module development. We have a list of skills, and we take them through that list of skills, and then we say, okay, now you're trained, right? Like you signed up for a training course. What are the titles? It's like Programming 101, how to be a great PHP developer, how to be a great JavaScript developer. There's a lot of this focus on skills. Excuse me. What I'm going to advocate to you today is that for effective training, we don't focus on the skills. We focus on the experience of learning. We focus on creating an environment where people are enthused, where they're passionate, where they care, where they learn the things that they want to learn. And this is what I call the metacognitive autodidact grilled cheese hypothesis, which states that you learn to make grilled cheese by making grilled cheese, not by coupling cattle. You learn to make grilled cheese because it's yummy, and you learn to make French toast by accident. Okay. Now you're probably wondering, I've wasted 3 minutes of your time. And who is this guy, and what right does he have to talk to me about grilled cheese sandwiches? My name is Jacob Singh. I'm an engineer, been a Drupal contributor for 5 years, and part of the community for 6. I've been working with Acquia for 4 years, and been full-time as a trainer for about a year. And I have a terrible sore throat. So please just bear with me for a second. If I run out of voice, I also trained in modern dance for a couple of years. So you never know. And I only want 25 minutes of your time. I know this is slated for an hour. I think that's a really... How many people think that's a good amount of time to hear someone talk for? Nobody. It's ridiculous. Okay. I only want 25 minutes of your time. Please just stay with me for those 25 minutes. I'm going to talk for 15 minutes about 3 values about teaching, which I learned the hard way, and you might apply in your own lives and what you do. We're going to watch a silly video for 5 minutes, which I made badly, and I'm going to spend another 5 minutes maybe talking about hacks you can use with your learners, or we'll just do questions, or I'll dance. Okay? So, what do you think is the biggest problem we have in Drupal right now? Is it selling Drupal? Not really. Shortage of talent, right? We can sell it, we can market it. The biggest sites in the world are running Drupal. Our companies are all doing well. We're just signing contracts and hoping that we hire someone fast enough to deliver them a lot of times. And so that's the best problem, right? Could you ask for a better problem than that? That's a good place to start. At Acquia, we uniquely have this problem because we have to grow really fast to make our business plan work. And so we started this program called Acquia U. Anyone here heard of Acquia U? A few of you? We started this up. We took 8 web developers who wanted to get into this field, and we give them 6 weeks of training on Drupal, customer service, and on Acquia. So they may become Acquia employees. They are full-time employees, but they may get a permanent position. That was the program. Just ended 2 weeks ago. This is the group. I'm this goofy guy on the right. Kay van Valkenburg, my partner in crime right there, is in the middle. He was also working on the program. And this is the gang. And I'm not an expert, so I didn't go to school for instructional design. I'm not any cognitive scientist. I'm just a loudmouth engineer who ended up becoming a trainer because I talk too much and I know about code. But I have to say, this is the best project of my career. I felt it was very successful, and I learned a ton. And I want to share a little bit that I learned with you. And I would boil those down into 3 core principles. We have to decide between a plan and a passion. We choose passion. We have to decide between theory and practice. We choose practice. And we have to decide between something that's simple and smooth and something that's authentic and real. We choose the authentic. Okay? And I'm going to start with the first one. Seems like a good place to start, which is that passion is more important than planning. Okay. So to get started for this program, we had approximately 4 weeks. And so I started working on a syllabus. How many of you got syllabuses in high school? College? You get a lot of them. They look something like this, but don't read it. That's why I put that there. It's there to demonstrate how long it was. Okay, so there's a lot of bullet points. There's learning outcomes for everything. There's lesson plans. I had a lot of structure. And structure is good. A plan is good. You should have a plan. But, the plan is not going to work for the entirety of their program. Plans are only good for the moment they're created. And so by week 4, the group came and said, you know what, you've been pushing us really hard. We've learned a bunch of stuff. But there's some things we don't know and we want to review. So can we throw out the plan and do something else instead? And I said, sure. I said, all right, put together your ideas and let's vote on them. So the group voted. And the number 1 vote getter was Git and learning more about Git. Who here knows what Git is? Do I have to describe it? Wow, okay, I don't. All right, that's good. So for those of you, the couple of you didn't raise your hands, Git is a tool for managing changes to code and tracking them. That's fine. So without a lesson plan, we came in and it was like Tuesday afternoon. It was around Miller time, and everyone was kind of tired. And I said, okay, why don't you guys just go up and draw for me on the board how you think Git works. They wanted to know about more like the internals of it. And so the group got up on the whiteboard, and everyone got a little section. And they came up with these drawings. The photography is not good of how Git works. Erica came up with this, this hands coming out of her laptop, going up to the server gods in the cloud and bringing down the code. Chico had the whole thing set up nicely, and Puppet Master Dries up at the top, sort of controlling the flow of information. Mark had Larry, the Git guy, with his Get Her Done cap, pushing and pulling stuff in the magic cloud we keep talking about. The best one was Andrew. Andrew came to us from Boston College, or Boston University? University. Yeah. he did his master's in upper atmospheric physics. His last project was he built a railgun, and then he decided he wanted to come work for Acquia and make websites. Anyway, but better than physicist, he's a better drawer. He's a better artist than a physicist. And this is his. He came up with the Git parrot. Now, you may not think that a parrot has anything to do with a version control system, and you would be absolutely right. But it turned out to be the most effective class I've ever given. And so what we did is, instead of tracking changes to code, we tracked changes to the parrot. So somebody made attractive and compelling lashes for the parrot, and that was one commit into our log. Then someone added a fantastic hat to augment beauty. Then we had a mohawk to foster gender ambiguity, and that came from somebody else on the other side of the room. So because there was a hat and a mohawk, what happened? A conflict, absolutely, which you can see in red on the finished parrot at the top. And it was a total riot. Everyone was having a great time, and it was amazing. In an hour and a half, this group of people completely understood the system, which is so dry and so hard to explain to people. And I didn't do any of it. I didn't plan it. They just came up with it. Then we practiced it on the laptops and sort of reinforced it. And the point I want to make here is that when you prioritize passion over a plan, you do the best thing you can do as an instructor, which is that you encourage your students to take responsibility for their own learning. You encourage rebellion. You encourage them to throw you out. Your goal as an instructor should be to deprecate yourself by the end of the class. You should just be, sitting there cheerleading and getting drunk in the corner. They should be doing all the work. It's great for everyone. So encourage revolution in your classrooms. Second, practice is more important than theory. Let me take a break, actually. Let me say that better. I would say that if you have to choose between theory and practice, practice should win. Okay, now a little audience participation, please. If you think the figure on the right best represents a software developer, raise your right hand. If you think the figure on the left best represents a software developer, raise your left hand. If you disagree with the person next to you, give them a high five, because your hands will be touching. Come on, more votes. Okay. All right, I see a few lefties out there. For those of you who are lefties, can you keep your hands up? Put your left hand up. Okay, you're all wrong. Software development is a craft. You don't get good at becoming a carpenter by learning how nails are made, and you don't get good at becoming a programmer by talking about how code is made. Fair? I don't care. I'm the one with the mic. I get to say it, but it's a hyperbole. It's too far off there. But I do feel like, in general, if I have to decide between talking about it and doing it, we should prioritize doing it. So the first week of Acquia U, we said, okay, here's your name tags. Let me apply your barcode onto the back of your neck. Welcome to Acquia. And here's a list of 8 random people in the company who you've never met. Go interview them. Ask them some questions. Make a Drupal site with all those interviews on it, and then make a staff directory where you can filter by department. You have 3 days. Good luck. Here's a list of resources that might help you. Here's some people you can ask questions. Go for it. And everyone, jaws dropped. I mean, this group, we had people who learned about Drupal when they applied for the job. They'd never really used Drupal before. We had someone who was a professional dancer before they got into this, who'd never written code before. But what happened was amazing. They met all kinds of people, they made relationships that went forward, and they struggled. They really, really struggled. They had to ask a lot of questions, they had to research on their own, they had to figure things out, they had to help each other. They stayed late, and on Friday they demonstrated their sites, and they were beautiful. All of them were amazing, and all of them were complete. Week 2, we had given them about 4 hours on command line training. So, is there anyone here who just learned to use the command line recently? A couple people? It's kind of a daunting task, isn't it? Was it hard? Well, they're shy. They don't want to admit they just learned. Okay. But for a lot of people, it's hard. If they've never typed into a terminal, it's a pretty difficult thing to do. We gave them like a half day on that. We gave them a half day on Git and the basics of Git. And then we said, okay, now take that Drupal Garden site you made with all those interviews on it and upload it to Acquia's hosting, Acquia Cloud, and bring it up there. Go. That's it. Here are the docs, and ignore the men in lab coats behind the glass over there, because we had all our usability team watching them to see how they would fail. And it was a little painful. In retrospect, that was a little too much of a leap. But the end result was that, as much as they struggled and nobody got that done, nobody succeeded that week, struggle makes it stick. These people are going to be supporting our customers. And so we want two things, right? We want to know if they are able to, that they're able to see what our customers go through on a day-to-day basis. We want them to feel that same pain as our customers. And we also want to test the system on them because they're free guinea pigs that we have in the office. Anyway, when you practice, you struggle. And when you struggle, you reinforce the pathways in your brain, which let you know that that learning is valuable. And unless you give people an opportunity to struggle, they won't build those pathways, and they won't recall it when they need to. So as I said, practice over theory. There is no learn, just do. You don't learn things, you just do them. Learning happens by accident. Doing happens on purpose. Focus on doing. Now this one's a little bit of a funny one. Anyone here play sports or played sports like professionally or semi-professionally, like in college or something? Who really trained? What did you play? Volleyball? In college? Yeah. And so where did you practice? You must have practiced all the time, right? Where do you practice? The gymnasium, right? Has anyone played music professionally or played music professionally? And how did you practice? What do you play and how did you practice? Yeah. Setting aside regular time. But what instrument do you play? The organ? And did you read sheet music before going to bed? Probably not so much. Yeah. You mostly practice with your instrument, right? Yeah. And when you do volleyball, you mostly practice in gymnasium. You don't necessarily practice in your house, right? That could get messy. So a lot of times with training and as trainers, we want things to go smoothly because if things go badly, we feel like it reflects badly on us, right? Our students are confused and they're frustrated. And we feel like that reflects badly on us. So we want things to be smooth. We want our lesson plans to be smooth. As a presenter, I want this presentation to be smooth. But learning is most effective when it's authentic, when you do it in the environment in which you'll have to practice that learning later. And so one of the things that we did is we started out, Acquia is very team-centric, right? We talk about rockstar developers. Who here has ever heard the term rockstar developer? A few of you? Do you like that term? I don't. Who wants to work with rock stars? Egotistical, strung-out maniacs, right? We want to train studio musicians. Acquia is full of teams. We all work together. And so Acquia U should be too. So in the second week, we split the group of 8 into 2 teams. 2 teams of 4. And I asked them to name the teams. And I was like, do you want a team A and team B, team red, team blue? And they came up with the lasers and the phasers. Now, I guess that's from this movie Dodgeball. Is that true, or are they just putting me on? Because I've never seen the movie. Is there a team laser and a team phaser? Because I said it for 4 weeks, feeling like a jackass, and I don't know if it's real or not. But anyway, we went with it. And they were team laser and team phaser. And from that point on, everything was done in teams. Every deliverable was in teams. And teams have a lot of benefits because everyone shares their skills, right? If you have someone who's good at graphic design and someone who's good at configuring varnish, you come together. Someone who's good at presenting and project management, they all can come together and succeed as a team and help each other and learn from each other. It also motivates people. But more importantly, that's how they're going to work once they leave our program and they go in the real world. So why shouldn't we train them that way? Everything they did was just like they would do once they had a normal job. They used Jira. Don't look at this slide. I should have put up a red thing. There's a lot of text. But we used our project management tools. Everything we did, to track projects. In the beginning of every week, we did a sprint. They would plan what they're going to work on. They'd commit to it. And on Friday, there'd be a demonstration. They'd demo it, retrospective, the whole Scrum process, for those of you who are aware of that, Agile process. And they worked on some projects which were sort of made up for them, but the majority of their work were just things that need to be done at Acquia. I went out and I found people who needed work done that was appropriate, and we put it together. And there's a lot of problems with that. The problem is that real work is really, really messy. Yeah? It's one thing to say, okay, why don't you add this feature to Acquia.com where people can request a new article in the knowledge base. But it's another thing when you have to then find the developer who has the specs for that, when you have to get the code working on your local laptop, when you have to clear it with like 4 marketing people who all disagree around the text and all of that, right? It's messy. It's a pain. It's work. And it can be frustrating. But I want them to experience what they're going to be facing. And it's not just about learning how to build that form. It's about learning how to work with everybody else to get the job done. And that's part of holistically teaching it. So they can see all the angles when they get into the situation. We don't want one-dimensional characters coming out of this. And it's not just me. There's a distinguished-looking, boring white guy with a beard on the next slide to tell you the same thing. This is Robert A. Bjork, professor of cognitive psychology at UCLA. His great quote: "If information is studied so that it can be interpreted in relation to other things in memory, learning is much more powerful." Agree? So train. Train where you're going to use it. Learn in context. Train authentically. And those are the 3 points I wanted to make. And now I'm going to show you my silly video. One thing we do at Acquia in the engineering team, is anyone here from the engineering team? Did they get any? No, my compatriots didn't show up. Oh, well. Okay, that's fine. We use Scrum. Who here uses Scrum in their organization, or Agile, whatever we call it? A lot of people. How many people do demos as part of that process? Not for customers necessarily, but internally even. Yeah. How many of you do retrospectives? A few of you? Good. Cool. And so we did that every week with Acquia U. And the demos are great because it really, we invited everyone in the company. It wasn't just me and Kay. Like, Dries would walk in or Tom would walk in. Just like, check out what you guys are doing. So they knew that. So the pressure was on. And they presented. And the final week, we had about 50 people from the company pack the training room for their final demo. And they nailed it. They made me look so damn good. They were just amazing. And they came up with it themselves. I said, hey, I want you all to present about who you are and where you were before this program and where you are now for a couple of minutes. And they came up with a format basically showing a slide who they were and before and after and talking. And we recorded it. And the video quality is really terrible. And my editing is even worse. But that being said, I think some of them are kind of cute, so I wanted to show it to you. Okay? Here we go.
My train was basically akin to this. It was the original bridge of the Starship Enterprise. I could make stuff that looked nice, and it seemed like it was really cool, but when you get down, it's basically cardboard and Christmas lights. Now I can create sites that are a little more like this, where I have, of course, Captain Kirk.
So starting out, I was doing projects with atmospheric science, atmospheric physics, and I actually made a railgun. Here, I think I was a little overwhelmed. Picture. It's kind of like being a turtle, freaking out, being a little shell.
Use your imagination, it's a turtle.
I would say that I'm probably still a little dismayed, but I'm at least a little more colorful.
My name is Erica Lajeski. I'm the dancer in the group. Actually, a BFA in dance and teaching, of all things, and a master's degree in nonprofit arts administration. So I'm the one who's never programmed. I've never heard of command line. I've certainly never used Git. I feel like my Drupal experience was this starter home. I have gotten into command line, and I have used Git, and I've been working in DevCloud and pulling down sandbox sites and working with a team.
Hi everyone. I'm Madhura Vadvarkar, and prior to coming to Acquia, I mostly had programming experience with C++ and such. I've learned how to patch. I can understand module development. So I think I've come long distance from where I was.
Yeah, I'm Mark Sakurada. About 9 months ago, that was myself in Haramsha, Afghanistan. So I've got a little bit of a colored, different background. So as a reservist, I was a independent developer. So the will code for food literally applies. Probably not superheroes yet, but we're dressed up and ready to take on the fight.
I'm Nathaniel Hoig. Studied environmental studies in college and picked up web development as a hobby. So the hawk sort of represents where I was. I was the expert, but I was also very much the lone person. I would say that I'm much more like a bat. Bats are communal. They have a lot more agility. For my bat metaphor here, to be able to hunt bugs.
So my name is Sam. I graduated with a degree in computer science from Brown University. This is just a lake. There's not really much to say about it. But yeah, this is the good part. So this is
Hydra.
So this is a Hydra. I like Hydras. So I like to think of Drupal as a Hydra. You can, if you want to, just walk up and start hacking away, but it's a really bad idea. If you're lucky, maybe you'll slice off a head, but it's going to regrow 2 more. In the case of a Hydra, you might want to bring sort of a flaming sword. So when you chop off the head, it will cauterize it and not grow another one. For Drupal, if you fix a bug, send it up to Drupal.org as a patch, and then that bug is going to stay dead.
Hi, my name is Tim Jordan. So I graduated from UMass Lowell with a bachelor's in fine arts. My main focus was web design.
I'm sorry. Tim, the video just got cut, so sorry for Tim. But I had to leave him on anyway. The video ended. But anyway, thought it'd be fun. Let you know the people that we're working with. They're good friends, and they're really a fantastic group. And I hope you get to know them more as they show up at DrupalCons in the future, and maybe they're at this lectern or podium or whatever it is in the coming years. So that's it. I'm going to close. I promised you 25 minutes. I just hit it on the dime. Yeah. And last thing you remember, encourage revolution in your teams. Get them to take responsibility for their own learning. Make it fun. Make them want to learn. And just give them the environment to thrive. Just give them the environment to thrive and all the support you need. And this is really the best way I feel like that we can train the next generation of Drupalists. It's not through specific strategies around what skills we teach them. And it's not through necessarily training programs, although those can help, and I'm a trainer, and I do offer training programs. But it's really about, inside your organization, give them that hacker passion. Find a way to create the environment so they have that passion, and let them learn. Let them learn by accident. So we do have some more stuff. Kay was going to come up, and we're going to take questions if you guys want. And we have some more slides if you want to do that too. But leaving it up to you to let your passion dictate over the plan. So for now, thank you very much.
Can I introduce myself?
Yeah, please.
Questions? Right. So just to introduce myself really quickly. I'm Kay Van Valkenburg, and I was really excited to work with one of the most talented software engineers that I think, well, Drupal draws an incredible crowd of talented software engineers, but it was great to work with Jacob on this project. So a big hand for Jacob. Really nice presentation as well. In any case, I've spent the majority of my career helping people acquire software skills, and this was an exciting arena in which to combine a lot of things that are very specific to Drupal and a lot of opportunities for the future of Drupal and the way that teams work together in a larger group. Excited to hear questions. We'll fill them as best we can, but yeah.
And please do fill out the evaluation if you're going to take off. It's right there. We're supposed to say that. So yeah, go ahead. Any questions? None at all? Yeah.
When you started them off, get the group off, did you start them off with did they have any knowledge of
Sure. Good questions. He's asking, do we give them any orientation to Drupal, what content types are, and stuff like that before we just dropped them in? So yeah, it's a presentation, so I embellished a little bit. We did send out some resources ahead of time to people, but there were some people who were very fresh. The group was broad. One guy, Andrew, learned about Drupal during his interview, or like when he applied for the job. Another guy, Nathaniel, he already had a core patch committed. So we had everything in between. So we just sent out some resources ahead of time, and we gave them a reading list of things to look at. But explicitly, we didn't do a class on basic stuff because we had a few people who were pretty advanced, and we thought that would be better self-taught. So, yeah.
You had the privilege of the classroom there in North Boston or wherever it's at. What if you had to do some of this training and your organization was distributed across the country? How would you adjust it? You know, people keep telling us we have to do training by webinar.
Yeah.
Is it feasible, and how would you adjust to it?
That's a really tough question.
Well, I think it's absolutely feasible. I think you really have to start with, is this actually on? It sounds like it's not from here. It is on? Okay, then I won't mess with it. It's feasible, but I think you have to start with what your expectations are for the pace and the outcome. So a big component of what we focused on was actually building a sense of team, and I think that there's a special hurdle that comes with webinars and distance. And I guess if you prioritize that team building highly enough, you'd probably want to choose to gather them in one place. But I think that there's an awful lot that can be accomplished without people needing to be co-located, and teams work very, very well in a number of companies, including Acquia, that are distributed. So I think it has to do with aligning where you're going to put your focus and what you want as an outcome, and I think that would be an important one to consider.
One other point to follow up on that, and that's absolutely right. The team part is difficult. Someone who's been remote almost my entire career, that's a really huge challenge. I would like to talk to anyone who wants to talk to me about that, because it's something that we're thinking about at Acquia, myself specifically, around how do we really scale Drupal training big time. We use a lot of our partners' resources, like Drupalize Me. It was awesome for this group. Thank you. And other resources out there that people watched, but developing more of that and how we do distributed teams and how we give people a way to learn themselves. So if you're interested in that topic, please come find me, because I want to hear what you have to say about it. So yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Hi, thanks for a wonderful session. I'm Tony Val from Prometheus in Indianapolis. And I hadn't really thought about kind of addressing the finding people from this angle of, well, just train them yourselves. I was quite astounded to see the wide array of backgrounds of people that you've hired.
So were we.
Yeah. My question is, based on your experience and research, should we be filtering in any way, backgrounds of people, or can anyone basically be sort of molded into a Drupal developer?
He's trying to start a fight.
I know.
We actually, this is an interesting discussion that we've had quite a bit, and we'll probably continue to grapple with it for a while. Yeah. And if you don't mind, I'll throw out an initial answer. And again, I would say it depends on what your objectives are. And sorry if this ends up becoming the answer that I start out with to every question. But I would say, we talked a fair amount about what we would have done if the entire group had a more homogeneous starting point. If everybody had some experience with PHP, everybody had a solid grasp of CSS, JavaScript weren't, something you couldn't quite, get a handle on as a concept. So, we found that there were a number of at least objectives that were very valuable that could come out of this particular program. And I'm sure it's true in a number of different projects. If you're trying to build just an engineering team that everybody is going to work on a very specific set of engineering tools, I would say practically impossible. You'd need some very, very fast learners in the people who had less experience. Just to illustrate it, if you think about trying to teach one simple, relatively, topic, CSS to people in, let's say, 6 weeks, if that's all you had to do, you, I'm sure, can imagine some of the challenges. It's not a very complex thing, but experience counts for an awful lot when it comes to things like CSS, in part because of the way browsers behave with it. So that's at least part of an answer. I'm sure you have thoughts.
Yeah, just briefly, I mean, I think that it was a huge challenge having a diverse group that we had in terms of their skill level, in terms of their backgrounds or where they came from and who they are. That was a much more diverse group than Acquia or our community as a whole, and that was great. That was a huge strength, an absolutely huge strength. I couldn't overstate it enough. These people really worked well together as a team and gelled. So I think you can start anywhere, but I think doing it again, I would probably look for a slightly more homogeneous group. But primarily we hired for attitude. We didn't really hire for experience as much, and I think that was a wise move, and we'll continue to do that. So, yeah.
Hey, my name's Ben DiMaggio. I run a small Drupal shop in Boston, and we're taking a similar philosophy toward getting new people as to what you guys are doing, which is we're finding people who seem to have a good culture fit with us and who seem generally bright, but who may not have a lot of skills to begin with. But I'm discovering that one of the downsides of that is that you'll begin to train someone in ways similarly informal to what you described, but you'll find that they're not picking it up fast enough to be effective. And we don't really have the luxury of giving people a 6-week training course to begin with.
Yeah.
So I wonder what you would recommend for dealing with slow learners.
This is the problem. This is the problem with every presentation I give as an Acquian. They're like, "That's cool, but you guys are rich. What am I going to do?"
I wasn't trying to make.
There's always that question. I don't know. To be honest, yeah. What we do is a long-form investment in the individual, which not every company can afford to do. And I worked in small consulting shops before, and I know what that's like. I would say that's like, I put together a series of hacks here, which I can talk about. I'll share with you a couple really quick. I'll share it with one, and then Kay will share with you another one, which I think do address this. One of the ones that's pretty cool is this idea we came up with called mechanical bulls. So basically a customer being a real bull and this being a mechanical bull. So it's a fake customer. And we made up this conceit. Heather James, some of you know in Ireland, she came up with this great idea, which is the You Win site. It's like an award site for YouTube videos. You submit your favorite videos, and people come and vote on them and make awards out of them. We made this site, bare bones, and we wrote up about 30 requirements for it, written like user stories. Like we had personas. We did the whole thing like a mock client. And we said like easy, medium, and hard for site building, and easy, medium, hard for programming, for some coding. And for the last few weeks, the teams would pick a few as part of their work assignment. They also did authentic projects, right? This is not an authentic project, but it's the best we could do to create an authentic project that was like seemed real. And so this was really effective, and it allowed people this like dojo, if you will, to come into and hit the punching bag. And they're like, okay, let me try another one, let me try another one, let me try another one. And that was really effective. And so if you have to train people in a rush, it actually is a good way, if you can't trust them on client sites, to give them this thing, develop a really good punching bag, and let them go nuts on it. Basically keep evaluating their progress on that. It becomes a more valuable resource over time as more people work with it. You have more and more stories of how different things are done, and that can be effective. This is actually, for the last week, the assignment was, okay, each team, take the site, make up your own requirements, and make it awesome and demo it. This is what one of the teams came up with. There's a lot of really cool features here. They wrote custom modules, and they did lots of great stuff with it. So that was actually a really useful exercise that everyone liked a lot. And we're going to probably incorporate that into a lot of Acquia's training programs as well, like our paid corporate training stuff. And the other one is this.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Mentorship, which is actually pretty close to another thing that we talked a fair amount about, and that is pair programming. The mentorship in Acquia U was set up to be very casual, and it ended up in some cases with technical challenges that people were facing that were hard to address as a group. It ended up providing incredible creativity and resources for answering some of these questions. One of the, well actually, let me just back up one step. Casual mentorship, in the sense that we didn't try any fancy chemistry or mechanical experiments to actually pair people well. People on the Acquia U side walked into the room, and on the mentorship, the group of people who had volunteered as mentors walked into a room, and people basically said, On the mentor side, what their various interests were, and on the Acquia U side, where they came from, what their background was. And it was like, okay, pair up. And they walked out of the room with pairs, more or less. It was very, very quick and casual like that. A lot of things came out of that just because of the personalities of the people who volunteered as mentors. And then in addition to those mentors, fortunately we had a number of people, well, there's a culture to start out with, of people who are ready to help each other out, who rely on helping each other out. And this kind of casual arrangement with mentors became incredibly powerful. And there's a great story, take just a second to tell it because it's worth telling, of people wanting to understand DNS. And one of the people who was not officially a mentor but did a lot of mentoring in the group came up with an analogy between the receptionist at Acquia and all of the people that you might want to locate at Acquia, or the resources that you might need at Acquia, and she became the DNS server.
Yes.
It was great. You couldn't have asked for a more creative way to solve some of these problems, some of these questions that were coming up, some of the struggles that people were having. In a more formal form of mentorship, there's also a great tool that's certainly practiced by some companies as a matter of course, and that's pair programming, where basically two developers sit side by side and take on stories together. And Jacob, you advocated for that quite a bit as well. Probably, since it's not unique to this discussion, it's worth looking up pair programming if you're not familiar with it. There's a fair amount written about it.
Hopefully that's somewhat helpful. The other people check out is My Planet Digital. They have a really cool program, which I haven't talked to them about yet, but it looks really great, called Fellowships. And they're a consulting firm, a large one, but they have a way of doing it where they have low impact. We hired full-time employees. They were like 7 hours a week, and they had different things. I don't know how it's going or whatever, but it's an interesting looking model, and they have a sexy looking website, so check it out.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no worries.
Hi, my name's Dave Look. I'm a partner in a small firm in Chicago as well.
Hey, Dave.
So, similar question. I think you guys actually touched on quite a bit of this, but we're working on consulting on a pretty large project, and we have a diverse group. So Lullabot actually partners. So we've got everybody from Sid and Andrew Barry to people that have never touched Drupal before on our project.
Fun.
So how do you suggest, and we're a year in on probably a 2 to 3 year project. So how do you suggest getting those people that are at the low end up at least to the middle?
I mean, I don't really have a good answer to that, I'll be honest. I don't really know. I think that, as I said, my personal philosophy is that getting the environment right is harder and more important than getting the list of these are things you have to teach right. I mean, are they working with people who are more experienced? Do they have mentors? Do they have free time to hack on stuff where they're not expected to deliver project deliverables, where they can maybe stretch themselves a little bit? On a project, I think there's limited success you can have if you're like on a project deliverable timeline as opposed to a building a team, building a company, building a culture timeline. I really feel like the latter is the only place where you can really invest in people. Otherwise, you can just do quick shot trainings like knowledge stuff. Come in for 2 days, talk to you about this module and how to code for it, done.
Yeah.
I think that's really all you can hope for in that environment.
Yeah, thank you.
Not that I'm an expert or anything, but anyway.
I'm Clayton Dilks with Raytheon Web Solutions in Pasadena, California. And I think you kind of answered my question with that last one. I've got a team that we're transferring from Cold Fusion into Drupal, primarily Drupal, but we still have a ton of Cold Fusion work.
Sure.
And as we all know, Drupal resources are hard to come by. So essentially what I'm struggling with is training people. We don't have time to put together a 2-week intensive course.
Yeah.
And looking over a further long-term couple of hours a week at most. Do you have any advice on strategies for that?
I'd love to throw out a piece of advice. Don't underestimate the importance of best practices. Experienced coders will often find a way to get done what they need to do. It will appear fine. It will appear to behave fine. And one of the hardest,
those things start getting baked into what teams do, and it's extremely hard to move forward with that. What you end up with is one of the most pernicious forks you could saddle yourself with. So I would say be realistic. The timeline you're suggesting is incredibly challenging, and I think the pain that will come from rushing that
outweighs the pain of investing in it.
It really does. And unfortunately, we see it over and over again.
Yeah. I would say that one thing you can do if you don't have the budget or whatever, like we do training programs at Acquia, and we'll come in and do private trainings with groups of anywhere from 3 to 50 or whatever. And those can be really effective. We can do like one-day things or week-long things. But I feel like a good way to do that is to do like a 2 or 3 day hit of training, because honestly, classroom training is like, you can't do more than that before people start to burn out in a week. And repeat that every quarter or every few weeks or every month or whatever. So a little bit of classroom, a lot of practice, a little bit of classroom, a lot of practice. But it's about making an investment and keeping going back to that. I feel like it's important.
And it's worth also adding, you can stage a lot of the move. You can do it with appropriate projects. You can get some advice if you're not familiar, with how to go about it first. But a fairly brief engagement about best practices in architecture on a specific project you think might be a good fit is a really good way to bring people along.
Cool. Yeah, it's on.
All right, I'm Brian Braun, and I was just wondering, you said that this was your first iteration through the training program.
You wanted to join the program, didn't you? I saw you on Twitter.
Anyways, I wanted to know what have you learned from this iteration that you would change differently and do it differently the second time around or the third time around?
Actually, it's funny. What I did at the end, I didn't do it actually. So as I said, we do a retrospective every week. For those who don't know what a retrospective is, basically what went well, what didn't go well, what do you want to change, discuss it as a group. And what came up with the last retrospective was, this was great, we all totally loved it, everyone was really happy, and everything should have happened in week 1. It would be a lot easier if I knew what I learned in week 6 at week 1. And we threw it back and said, okay, well, one of them actually said, well, why don't we design our own syllabus? So I was like, that's great. So each team then spent the weekend, a couple of days, building their own syllabus. They took my syllabus and the reality of what we actually did, which is deviating from the main syllabus, and they built their own, how it should have been. Surprisingly, it was pretty similar to the one what we actually did. So I don't know if that means anything, but that was a fun exercise.
It's also worth mentioning that at the end of week 1, everybody basically agreed that it was physically not advisable to try to do another week 1 like that.
Yeah.
So to have the scope of week 1 grow is kind of funny.
I think it's hard to say. I think we stayed on the edge of dysphoria.
Yeah.
I don't like 25-cent words. I just used one, sorry. Dysphoria means, if you don't know, it means like when it doesn't feel good. It's good to stay on the edge of when it doesn't feel good, because that's where the learning really happens. That's where, like I said, the struggle makes it stick. So we set up an environment where people push themselves very hard. We didn't push them very hard, but we said, hey, on Monday, commit to what you're going to get done by Friday. And invariably, they'd overcommit, and they'd be stressed out and freaking out and up all night and like treating their bodies like crap, and their families hated them. And I'm like, I didn't ask you to do all that, but So that was cool. People wanted to work really hard. They wanted to prove something. I think we could have controlled that a little better. I think we went a little too far some weeks, or people were just totally burnt out and frustrated. And at the end, it all ended well, but I would manage that a little more tightly. As I said, I'd have a slightly more homogeneous group. I think we're a little too all over the map. What else? I would prepare external speakers better. It was great because we had all these people at Acquia. Like Angie came and talked, Dries came and talked. A lot of people you probably don't know but are fantastic developers, and other experts in other fields came and talked to the group, which was hugely valuable. But we didn't always prepare them well enough, I think, or we didn't make sure that they were prepared well enough. So I think I would ensure that there's a little more planning when external people come in. These are specific things, but you asked, so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Hans Riemenschneider. I fully agree.
You said Hans?
Hans.
Hans,
yes.
okay.
When someone is engaged,
yeah.
You cannot not learn. And when
Yeah.
somebody is disengaged, it's extremely difficult or impossible to learn. And
What?
I like the idea of basically taking a bunch of people and throwing them in the pool and having them work together. But like an ecosystem like Drupal, it's not anything goes. You know, we have coding standards, and those need to be followed for the community to function well. So new people are not going to be aware of those. So what do you address on the front end of this is something you should watch out for and avoid, and what do you circle around to when a mistake is made and say, well, we would rather do it this way?
Got a chance to, thank you. Got a chance to plug another hack here, which are the portfolios. You know, we made it a requirement to document your work. So everyone, those original Drupal garden sites they made with the company directories, those became their blogs, their portfolio sites, where they documented everything that they worked on. And that was awesome. And it was a requirement to blog every week. And they have some awesome blog posts. And people made screencasts and all kinds of stuff that they wrote about. And they're still doing it. And they're all at this site, u.acquia.com. But to answer your question specifically, you were asking about, well, how do you let people just go run free? You know, and it's not exactly like that, because they demonstrate their work every week. We'd look at it every week. We'd discuss it. We'd have retrospectives, and they would reflect on it. And in the process of reflection, a lot of times these things would surface. A lot of times the troubles would surface. We did a lot of reflection. They wrote in their blogs. We did retrospectives, and we heard where people were coming from, their concerns. We looked at their code. They had mentors who looked at it with them. So it's not about, I think the thing is, you have 8 people, and they're all over the experience spectrum, right? So some people need to hear about coding standards, probably like 3 of them, who can program but don't know Drupal. 3 of them are not programmers or barely programmers. So talking about coding standards is just going to bore them to tears, and they don't even know what the hell you're talking about. And a couple other ones already have core patches. They don't need to hear it at all. And that's just one example, but pretty much any topic you pick, you're going to find that spread. And so it was really more about give them projects to work on, give them a supportive team, supportive mentorship, and those specific things they need to learn, they'll have to take responsibility for finding and learning those things themselves to a certain extent. We'll help them, we'll clue them in, but it's not about I can take the class and say, you all need to know X so you can do Y. Because they all have different X's and they all have different Y's, unfortunately. So the project-based approach was really the only way to make that successful.
I think it's also worth adding to that the community does a pretty good job of giving some broad guidelines. And so if you can impart one guiding principle, it would probably be assume that you haven't done this first, you, the person who's learning. Go and find how a trusted resource has done it. Refer to documentation on Drupal.org. And then some of the phrases that they'll naturally come across, and certainly you can reinforce as well, like configuration before coding, don't kill kittens, you know, that type of thing. Those are some pretty good guidelines. So there's a saying, you know, set someone free and then just have them go wild. It's not entirely wild if you can give them those kind of leads. On the flip side, there's a risk in those types of leads, and that is that there is a variety of quality. Even if you only get the most well-constructed tutorials, then there's also a variety of focuses and scopes. So to preview some of the things that people are going to as resources and give them some guidance on how well that fits with what your team does or what your project does, those all help control that sense of setting people loose and seeing what they come up with.
So I think with that, we have to close because we're out of time. But thank you all for coming. Really enjoyed it. If you want to find me, Twitter's good. Name is Jacob Singh, just like my real name. Business cards are here. If you want to get in touch with me that way, you probably lose them, but what the hell, they're there.
And you can find me. My username is ownsourcing.
Ownsourcing. Sorry, ownsourcing. Ownsourcing.